Hey guys, Matt here. I just want to welcome you to week 10 and 11, which is actually make that 11 and 12 of HTML and CSS. So you guys should have at this point already completed your Code Academy up through Unit 6 on HTML, CSS and submitted that badge, screenshot of the badge. And feel free to continue with Code Academy. It's a great resource, not only to learn the fundamentals of HTML and CSS, but also a lot of other languages like Java, Ruby, Python, things like that. And another one is called Team Treehouse that I highly recommend checking out. So after you guys submit that, you'll get a little understanding. And so today what we're going to go through is a follow-along project to build a simple responsive web page. A responsive website means that it responds and scales to the size of your browser or your device, be that mobile, desktop, or tablet. And displays pretty much the same site, just displayed differently to the end user. So here's a quick sample of what we're going to be building today. Pretty straightforward, basic blog site. So this is what desktop view. If we scale the browser down, here we just hit tablet, and if we continue down, we see the images scaled down a little bit for what mobile would look like. And we have some hover elements for the navigation and scrolls down. So this is what we're going to be building out today and learning how to put these elements together. So for today, we're going to need some new software. If you haven't already gone ahead and downloaded it, go ahead and click on Adobe Brackets, and then go ahead and HTML5 boilerplate. So these two are going to be the fundamental software we use from going forward. So once you're on boilerplate, go ahead and click download. It will take you to your downloads folder, and then on brackets, I already have it downloaded, but go ahead and click download. It will do the same thing and install it. You might want to hit pause as that happens. Otherwise, I'm going to continue on into the project. So once you have brackets installed and boilerplate, here's my downloads folder, and I'm going to go ahead and unzip boilerplate. And then I'm going to drag this over to my desktop. And I'm going to go ahead and rename this. Instead of V5.3, version 5.3, I'm going to type in Spolar, my last name, just to keep naming conventions correct. And then I'm going to go ahead and open up brackets. And when brackets opens up, it's going to load a basic HTML page, some things you might be familiar with like A tags and doc type from Code Academy, but go ahead and leave this alone. We're not going to be using this. And one last one I forgot, we're going to need to download the image compressed zip file from Blackboard, and that will download. And we'll go ahead and click unzip on that one. And this one we're going to have to put into our HTML5 boilerplate. So all these files that come in our folder just help it easier to work with websites. But let's go ahead and find the image folder, IMG. It should be empty. And let's go ahead and click on this image folder. And here are the images we'll be using: Venus, Mars, our logo, and our background. So let's go ahead and take these, and we will just drag those into our image folder. And now they're in there. So now that we have these, we can go back to brackets. And in brackets, we're going to go to File and Open Folder to open up the project we're going to work on. So mine was on my desktop, and I'm going to click once and click open. It says there's an error. Sure, I think it's because I was working on a previous file. That's okay. And so right here we see our left and our right. You may or may not see these two windows, but right here is how you change that. So we go to no split view, and we can view one document, or we can say vertical split, and we can work on two. And we're going to go ahead and click on that vertical split so we can work on our HTML on the left. And over here, we want to click once and go to File and New. And let's go ahead and add a comment code, so slash, asterisk, asterisk, slash to end it. And we're going to type in Spolar CSS styles. And we're going to go ahead and click File and Save As. And let's name this styles styles.css and click Save. And so what we just did is we created our styles.css for our CSS elements, and over here is our index.html, which is our main HTML page. I'm going to drag this over just a little bit to give HTML a little more room. So some of this might be like, oh my gosh, what is happening? It's okay. It's what comes standard in HTML5 boilerplate. It's what makes your code speak with different browsers and different device sizes out of the box better than it had in HTML1, HTML2, now in HTML5. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and set up some basic elements. So let's go ahead and look through this code, and on line number 6 under title, let's go ahead and give our website a title. Let's call this VICO 2561. Follow along, and let's hit save. And remember, at any point, you can either hit Command Save or Control Save or File Save, whatever preference you have. But go ahead, and anytime you make a change to a page, remember to save it, because when we go to preview this, those changes won't be reflected unless you save it. So we can see what's happening. Go ahead and go back and get into your folder. And once you're in there, go ahead and take your index and drop it into your browser. I would recommend using Chrome or Mozilla Firefox while you're doing development. Those browsers seem to be the best for development. Windows comes with Internet Explorer. You can get plenty of other ones, but I highly recommend Google Chrome and Mozilla as your preferences while doing web development, or really any internet browsing for that matter. So in here we see Hello World. This is HTML5 boilerplate. So if we come back into brackets and we scroll down, and inside of our body tag we see Hello World, we can go ahead and click and type whatever we want, hit save, and let's come back and hit refresh, and we see that changes instantly happening. But remember, we have to save our page. So before we do that, we want to go ahead and make sure we linked this CSS file. So if we look through our header tag and we see right here our style sheets. These two style sheets come out of the box. We're going to go ahead and leave those. We're going to hit enter a few times, and we're going to go ahead and link. And what kind of sheet are we linking? We're linking a style sheet. And then we're going to type href. And href is basically your finder. So where is it? So these files, normalize.css, live in a folder called CSS, and same with main.css, but ours does not. Ours lives in the main folder. So we're just going to call it the same name, or we're going to type in styles. Oh, it's already found it. And we're going to click it, and then we're going to close that link and hit save. And so what we did is we just gave it a relative link saying, hey, we want to make sure we link this style sheet to here. And we're going to be using href on a couple other elements, but this is the first file or image that we're going to link to this page. So let's scroll down a little bit. This commented code we can go ahead and leave, but this paragraph tag, let's double or triple click and just go ahead and delete it. And let's go ahead and just hit enter a bunch of times and return, and just kind of push that page down, because while this JavaScript and these Google Analytics do matter, we're not going to worry about it for this page, but we're just giving ourselves some space. I'm going to go ahead and click save so nothing gets removed. So inside this body, we're going to create our first element. We're going to create a div tag, and we're going to give that div tag an ID, and we're going to call it wrapper, because this is going to be the page wrapper that encases the top and bottom and sides, for that matter, of our element. If we hit caret, it goes ahead and auto closes div. Let's hit return once, and let's go ahead and comment for us to come back to later, or for other developers, knowing that this signals the end of an ID for wrapper, and we represent a wrapper with a hashtag wrapper. And let's hit save and return a couple times to move that down. So now everything we create is going to be created inside of wrapper. So inside that wrapper, we want to go ahead and create a header tag. Sorry, header, and it auto closes it. And we're going to give this one an ID again, and we're going to give it an ID, and we're going to call it main underscore Now we can do a couple other naming conventions. We can say main dash header, or we can say camelback, a main capital header, or the one that we used right here with the underscore. This underscore is kind of the naming convention that I usually work with when doing development. It seems to cross between languages pretty well, whereas the dash mark doesn't get handled as well in all JavaScript libraries, and the header camelback capital annotation is kind of on its way out. So I'd recommend just doing this underscore to separate letters and words. If you were to just add a space, that one again does not play well with all languages and CSS for that matter. So go ahead and just do an underscore. So when header closes, we're going to go ahead and hit return a few times and give that some space as well. And inside of header, we're going to give it another div, and we're going to give this one a class. And this class is going to be called inside. And once we have the inside created, let's go ahead and delete that space so we just have a clean page. I'm going to delete some of that space. And then let's remember to comment out the ends. So caret, exclamation point, dash dash, end, and class, period is class, so class inside. And again for header, caret, exclamation, dash dash, end, and this is an ID, so hashtag main underscore header. And this will help us later as we continue to do development. So underside the inside, we want to add our first logo, or our image. So inside here, let's add another div, and let's give it an ID so we can reference it later. And let's call it logo, and close that. And we're going to go ahead and not indicate the end of that one right now. And then in here, we're going to do our first HTML tag, and we're going to give it an img, or an image tag. And for an image tag, we have to declare two things. We have to tell them where the image is coming from and what is the alternative text for it. So src is where to find the image. And if we go ahead and say, none of these look like an image file, but remember we moved over a folder called img. Oh, and it's already found it. So we're going to click. And I clicked too fast, sorry. img, and click. And then in here we see a bunch of images. So let's go ahead and click logo. And then the only other thing we have to do is define alt, our alt text. So when you hover over the image, or what search engines can search if they can't find the image, is what they're finding. So let's just type in VICO logo. And let's go ahead and close that image tag. Let's hit save, and come back and hit refresh. And now we have our logo. But if we go and scale our page, the image doesn't grow or shrink with the page, it just kind of gets covered. And so what we want to build with a responsive site is an image that grows and shrinks, as well as text, depending on our browser size. So now that we've got our logo in here, let's go ahead and we're going to add our first CSS. So we know we're working with an image. So we want to go ahead and come over to our CSS sheet. And in our CSS sheet, we're going to say for every image, and curly brackets, which is what we put our CSS inside of. Let's hit return. So there's a clear break, and save again. And so there's two things that we want to declare to make an image responsive. And that's our max width, and we want to say we want it to be 100% of the device size we're on. And we also want to set a height to auto. And so this kind of hack, for lack of a better word, is a way that we tell a browser that an image is responsive. So if I refresh my page and grow, my image now shrinks and grows with my browser size, my device size. And there's a bunch of other ways that we can go about this, but for building a simple responsive site, once we have our image and our src and our alt declared, we're going to go ahead and say any image that we use in this browser or in this HTML document, we want it to be 100% of its width and have an auto height based on scalability. So it will always be 100% of the size of the window that it's being displayed in. So if this isn't working for you right now and you've saved your CSS styles, you've saved your index page, you've came back, you've refreshed, and you scale, and your image isn't growing or shrinking, go ahead and hit pause and take a look at my code and make sure you have everything that I have, both on the left and on the right for CSS, and most importantly that your link on line number 15 or 16 is tied directly into the name of your program file that you created. And so once you have that, let's go ahead and set up some navigation for this page. So the first thing that we want to do is going to, again, be within the header. So let's go ahead and take off the inside, and we're going to head and put in our navigation. And in our navigation, we want to have our nav elements. So underneath logo, we want to say nav. And inside of our navigation, we're going to have an unordered list. And inside of an unordered list are LI, or list items. So I'm going to go ahead and comment and say end nav. And the unordered list is self-explanatory. We don't have to end that because it will never get that far down the page away from the beginning. So inside that LI, we want to go ahead and put an anchor tag or an A tag. You should have done this in Code Academy. It's what makes a link, right? So we have to give an href, or when we click on that link, where are we going? For now, we're just going to give it a asterisk or a hashtag instead of the actual URL, and we'll close that. And so it auto closes our A tag, and inside there, let's go ahead and put home, and that will be our first navigation link. Let's hit save. And now we want to create a couple LIs. So I'm going to click 3 times, so I copy the line. I'm going to copy and paste, paste, and paste. So now there's 4. Because they're all written the same code, the only thing that will change is the text. So let's do home, blog, about, and contact. And let's hit save. And now if we come back to our Google Chrome and we refresh, we've now got our navigation. And nothing's looking great right now, but that's what we're going to be doing today. But we have clickable links for our navigation. It's in a vertical list. It's got some bullet points. All of these things are what we're going to change with some CSS. But so right now, if we go ahead and click View and Developer Tools, or you hold Option Command and I on Mac, and you click here, you can view your page and see what you're looking at. So here I'm looking at an image tag. Here I'm looking at an LI item. So if I click on this, there's my div logo, there's my LI, here's my navigation. Both of these are inside my main header, which go across the page. Let's go ahead and give that main header a background and make it look a little bit better. So we're going to come over to our CSS, and we're going to say ID. And what's the ID of that section? It's called main_header. We'll say main_header and code, curly brackets, and inside of here, let's go ahead and give it a background. And in order to give our image, we have to give it a URL, which is the same as href, which is the same as src. These are all interchangeable. And we're going to say in the image folder, and let's give it confectionery. And then colon ends it, and let's hit save, and come back and hit refresh. And now our entire main header section now has this confectionery image being repeated in the background. So now that we've added a background, a couple things that we're going to also play around with in CSS is the way the navigation's being displayed. It's underlined, it's purple, it's got some bullet points, although it's not an outline, it's a navigation. Let's change some of these things. So if we come back, and the first thing that I want to change is fonts. So instead of in like Microsoft Word where you have a drop down and you have Times, you have Comic Sans, you have Papyrus and other fonts that you should not be using, but Arial, Helvetica, things like that that we're used to. The web is similar in many ways. We can install our own fonts on our server, but so that we're sure that every browser and everybody's computer can display something in the same way, let's go ahead and open a new tab, and we're going to go to google.com/fonts. And once that loads, there's tons of fonts on the Google Fonts that we can use, both serif and sans serif, script fonts, all kinds of stuff. Let's go ahead and use Roboto. And it's a sans serif font, thin weight, it's got lots of options. Let's go ahead and click this plus icon. And we have one family selected. Let's click on that. Go ahead and go into Customize, because by default it will only give you the 400 weight, and let's go ahead and go for light 300. Let's get an italic, and let's get a medium weight 500 as well. And that's the points or pixel weight of the font. So let's go back to embed and go ahead and click at import. And we would copy this entire block of text if we were putting it in our HTML, but we're going to put it in our CSS. So let's leave the style part out of it and copy from the beginning of that import to the semicolon at the end and hit copy. And let's go back to brackets and let's go up above image, hit enter a few times and paste it in there. And so what we're saying is import the font from this URL from Fonts Google APIs. Here's the name of the font, and then here are the weights that we want to be using. And let's hit save. And now let's come back to here and let's say specify in CSS, and let's copy that whole line and copy, and let's come back to brackets. And so how do we allow the browser to use this? We have to say in our body tag, which where all of our content is, so let's say body, curly brackets, enter, enter, and we can paste that whole thing. We can also type font-family, and we can say fantasy, cursive, sans serif, but what we're doing is actually saying a named font that we've imported. So we're saying, let's use this imported font, and if we don't have that, comma, use any sans serif font that may be on their machine, so that at least mirrors and looks as close as we can. So let's save these pages, and let's go back to our browser. And pay real close attention as you hit refresh to the text. Not a huge change, but it has changed our font. So I'm going to go ahead and close this page. So it has changed our font a little bit, but let's go ahead and change our unordered list and how it's being displayed a little bit more. So let's go back into brackets, and let's come up into body, and let's say our nav unordered list. And in our unordered list, we want to say, hey, let's change our list style to none and hit save. If we come back and hit refresh, it has changed from a circle list style to none. We can change it to squares, and there's lots of other options, and we can put our own images in there, but we don't want anything to be displayed. Let's go ahead and also give it a margin of 0, and let's give it a padding of 0. Oh, sorry, and 0. And that's going to move it over to the edge of the page, but it's not just floating by itself. So now that it's just kind of locked to the side, we're going to go ahead and change that a bit. So it's not just flush against the edge of the page, but this way it's being directed by our own elements. So let's come in here and let's go ahead and say, what is the nav in? The nav is wrapped in this div, the inside. So let's go ahead and say anything with the class of inside. Again, class is defined by period, and a ID is defined by a hashtag. So on the inside, let's go ahead and give it a padding of 20 pixels. So if we just say padding and 20 pixels, padding applies to the top, right, bottom, and left. Or we can individually say padding bottom, left, right, or top. So if we just leave those out and we say padding, it will give padding top, right, bottom, and left. So save it, come back, and hit refresh. Now anything inside, both the logo and this, have padding 20 here, 20 here, 20 here, and 20 here. And as we begin to scale the browser, you can see right here, this is where that 20 comes into play, so that it looks flush on all four sides. The font's still kind of purple, and it's still gotten underlined. Let's go ahead and change those things as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to come back into brackets, and we're going to say on our nav UL, let's go ahead and say on our nav A tag, on our nav A tag, let's say our text decoration, and let's say none, and hit save. And let's come back. And now we've taken our text decoration for clickable links away. So there's a couple different things that we can do here. We can add backgrounds, we can add different effects, sizes, things like that. But now that we have clickable links, if I want to click on a navigation, I can only click on the text. But I can't click all the way over here, although it's hard to imagine it right now. This should be a full button. So let's go ahead and come into our A tag, and let's say display, and let's display it in a block instead of just a text. And let's give it a padding of 5 pixels. And so this display block and padding is going to give padding between these two, as well as be the whole area clickable. So now they have a little bit of padding. I can click on the text, or I can click all the way over to the edge. If you imagine an inspector might prove it easily, the A tag now goes all the way across and all the way edge to the side. Excuse me. So now that we've had these two items, we can go ahead and add pseudo class elements, which allows us to see what has been clicked, what is clickable, and on hover have a changed state. So underneath our A tag, we're going to go ahead and say anything in our nav A that is a link, and anything in our nav that's an A tag that is been visited, or anything that's in our nav that's an A tag that is active. Curly brackets. We're going to go ahead and group these three together. Let's go ahead and give them a background color. And we're going to give it an RGBA value, which is our RGB color palette, with A, which is our alpha transparency. Let's go ahead and let's make it a white background. And white is 255, 255, 255. And let's give it a 0.5%, so it's a low transparency alpha value. And hit colon and save. And let's go back and see what we've done. Okay. We've added a color background to it. It looks like we've applied it in a whole block, when in fact we've applied it to each LI, which we'll be able to space if we give some spacing to the actual list element items. So let's come back into brackets. And let's go ahead and say, let's move it up above our A tags. Let's say our nav LI items. And let's give them a margin on the top, and let's give them something small like 4 pixels, and hit save. And so now what we have done, and as soon as we hit refresh, on the top of each one of these we should have added, and if we hit refresh, we'll see a 4 pixel small separation between them. And now when I hover over them, let's change like not only color, but color of the font. So what we can do is, to get our hex codes, let's go ahead and go to another browser, and let's say htmlcolorcodes.com. There's plenty of sites out there, as well as Photoshop, Illustrator, to get your hex color codes. But this site is a pretty great resource. So let's think our font color when it's not being hovered over. Let's go ahead and pick like a light orange. We can pick our color codes, yeah, something right around there. So what this provides us is our CMYK, RGB, and our color hex code, our hashtag. So for this value, let's go ahead and use RGB. So 255, 197, 17. So let's come back and let's say in our anything that's a link that has been visited or active, let's give it a color. And let's say RGBA. And let's say 255, and I don't remember what it was, 255, 197, 17, and let's go ahead and go 0.5 again, and colon to end that line. And we hit save, and let's come back and refresh, and now we have orange fonts. Let's go ahead and say, so now we have our color code set for that. Let's go say on hover, we want our nav A on hover to be set for something else. So let's go ahead and say our background, RGBA, and let's hit colon there to end it, and we're also going to set the color. And let's just hit hashtag RGBA there. And let's hit save because we're going to come back and enter those values. So let's go back and get another color. So what goes good with orange? Let's say like a light blue. Sure. And let's go ahead and just grab the hashtag color code for that one. Actually, let's do RGB again, just because we're used to be doing that. So 25, 168, and 255, and 0.5 again. And then let's go ahead and say, let's not do RGB for this one, and let's do our color hex code, and let's do FFF, which is the white color hex code. So when we hover over a list item and the background is blue, the text color should be white instead of orange. So let's go back and see if what we've done. And so now when we hover, it changes to white text on a blue background from a orange image. So now we've got some background and we've got some font colors. I'll come back and hold here for a second to make sure, in case you need to pause and review the navigation code and go back. So what we've done, we've added a little bit of margin on the top, we've changed the color font color, we've changed the background color, and we've started to manipulate kind of some interactions. So what happens when we hover over navigation and things like that. So now we've got our logo and our header navigation in. Let's go ahead and add some content into the main page. So for that section, we're going to come down and beneath our header, we're going to add a section, and this is going to give it an ID of main_section, and close that one. Let's go ahead and comment that before it moves down too much. End ID main section, and let's give it some spacing. And then let's go ahead and let's add another div class of inside and close that. And let's go ahead and comment that as well for the end. End class inside. And now we can start moving those down. I'm going to delete some of the space just to keep them, the ends together. And one more up just to keep that spacing as well. You can keep it as clean or as not as you like, but the cleaner alignment, left align, indent, indent, and straight lines keeps your clean code easily readable, not only by you later when you come back and you're like, what was I doing? But to anybody else that might be working on the project with you. So now that we have the div class inside added, let's go ahead and add an H1 tag, our header tag, and let's call this VICO 2561 follow along project. And let's hit save and flip back and see what we've done. Okay, cool. So now we've added our H1 tag. It looks like it's kind of a thick font, a thick weight. I think that maybe our H1 tags should be a little bit thinner opposed to this massive, maybe a little bit thinner like these, just to add a little difference, a little visual hierarchy. So what we can do is we can come into our CSS, and underneath our body towards the top, we can say any H1 tag, H2 tag, or H3 tag, curly brackets, and say return. Let's set the font weight, and let's set that, that was probably a 400 or a 500. Let's go ahead and say 300, and colon to end that, and let's hit save. And refresh. Okay, that looks a little bit nicer. It's a little bit cleaner, and I think with some paragraph tags and some body text in there, it'll help break up a little visual hierarchy. So let's go ahead and add in, let's add in a little background, because there's like this white, and then we've got a background image in there. Let's go ahead and try and match it to this orange or this blue, either one. I'm going to go ahead and come in there, and let's see, if we hover over it, it'll tell us our color. That's or transparent. That's that orange color. I like that color. So I'm going to copy that line, and I'm going to come down, and I'm going to say, let's come underneath our main header, because we're going to call out another main one. Let's call it a main section. And so this is anything that's displayed in this main section. And let's give it a, let's paste that line, but instead of giving a font color, let's give it a background. And hit save. And let's refresh. And it's kind of blending into the same color as there. As of right now, it's just a bar that stretches across, but as we add content to it, that will gain height. Because right now the only thing in that div is this one H1 tag. So now that we've got that color code in there, we've got an RGB value. We could also do a hashtag and our hex color code, or we could just type in red, things like that. But as long as you do one thing and do it again to maintain consistency, either pick an RGB value or a hashtag for backgrounds or for color, and try to push that out throughout your designs. Okay, so now that we've got our colored background, our H1 tag, let's go ahead and add our blog. So let's add another div underneath the H1, and let's call it div ID, and let's name it blog, and close, and return. And under here, let's end and close, oops, sorry, and end ID blog. And inside of our blog, we want to have an article, and inside that article, we want to have an H2, and let's call this my first blog post. Let's hit save and see what we've done. Okay, starting to gain some height there. Underneath that H2, let's get our first image in our blog. So let's go ahead and do an image tag again, and src. Where is it coming from? I don't really remember. So let's come back and let's look what's in our folder. So we're working on this index page. What else do we have? Oh, the image folder. So inside this image folder, we've got a couple images. Let's go ahead and pick out our Venus image. So if we come back, we're saying let's look into the image folder. And again, I clicked too fast, so I'm going to delete, go back, image, and let's pick Venus. And then don't forget, we have to add the alt tag, so alt, and then Venus. Yep, let's just leave that. And let's close the image. Let's hit save, and flip back, refresh. Okay, nice. That image is pretty huge, but on mobile, it's going to scale down nicely because we have the max height and width set to grow and shrink with page dimensions. And after that, let's go ahead and add a P tag or a paragraph tag. And as far as our paragraph text goes, let's go and grab some lorem ipsum or some placeholder text. There's plenty of them out there. Let's go ahead and type in bacon ipsum. You can get hipster ipsum, you can get beer ipsum, you can get all kinds of fun ipsums. Let's go ahead and do bacon. Sure, give me some bacon. And let's go ahead and just pick out a random paragraph. Yeah, sure, this first one looks great. And copy it, come back into brackets, and let's go ahead and paste that right there. Now this P is kind of hanging off the back, so let's go ahead and highlight the space, negative space, and let's just bring it in all the way to the end, just so we know that where it closes. So after we've got that, let's close this, come back to our page, hit refresh. Our text is now growing and shrinking with our page, as well as our image, and our blog is starting to come together pretty nicely. So let's come back into brackets, and we've got our first article. So what we can do is, let's go ahead and create another article. So article, close it, hit return, go up one. Let's get our header 2. Let's call it my second post. Let's go ahead and get our other image in there, image and source. Where's the source coming from? It's coming from our image folder. Let's put our Mars image up there. Alt tag, let's say Mars photo, and close that tag. And then again, paragraph and close. And we can go ahead and grab the same text again. So just highlight that, copy, and paste. That P seemed to go right into it. So everything's looking good. Let's hit save and go back and make sure that it's looking good. Everything's looking great. Does this grow? It grows and shrinks pretty well. I think our blog is starting to come together pretty nicely. The other thing that's not really changing for us is the navigation. So sure, this is what a good mobile nav looks like. But on tablet, it's probably a different orientation, and on desktop, this doesn't apply at all. It maybe should be over in this space somewhere in what traditional websites kind of look like. So in order to do that, we want to go ahead and say, okay, we're good with mobile. Mobile looks good, but now we need to change this navigation from not just a vertical layout, but to a horizontal layout. And then also we want to set breakpoints. And what I mean by breakpoints is, this is a desktop, and right around here where the image starts to scale, that's going to be our tablet size. And then right around here where that starts to scale is going to be heading towards our mobile breakpoint. So we need to set those breakpoints. And what we do to set those breakpoints is something called a media query. So we come down to the bottom of our CSS document, set some spaces so we get some room. Let's go ahead and add some comment again. And so that's open and close of the comment. And let's say start media query. So let's come in here and move down a little bit, and we're going to say at all media only screen, and let's say our screen size, let's say a minimum width of, let's do our tablet view, so 768 pixels. And then let's say curly brackets. And so anything that goes inside here will only apply, we'll go ahead and hit save, will only apply in that size screen with a minimum size screen. So in here, what do we need to do? And let's flip back and I'll show you real quick. Hit refresh, nothing's really changed except for the code end. So if I hit Option Command I, or you go to View and Developer Tools. If you don't see these options in Developer Tools, go into Chrome or in Mozilla Firefox and Preferences and turn on Developer Tools. But so now that we come in here, we see our image. And what's our image held in? Our image is held in our div logo, but it looks to be spanning the whole width of the page. And what's our nav in? Our nav also seems to be spanning the whole width of the page. So instead of those displaying in a block, when the screen is small enough, we want those to display in a inline block, so they can be in line with each other, opposed to just separate blocks stacked on top of each other. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in here and we're going to say our nav li items, when it's a small screen, let's go ahead and let's display them on an inline block. Yep, that looks good. And so we also need to do that for our whole nav menu. So let's go ahead and say nav, and let's say display and inline block. Oops. And then let's also go ahead and say we need to do that for our logo, really. So let's say our ID logo, and let's display that as a inline block as well. And let's hit save and go back and see what we've done. Okay, so on a desktop view, our nav items are over here. Let's scale down to a tablet size once we hit tablet. Oh, so as soon as we hit, if you see right here, I've got my window resizer plugin that just tells me what size I'm looking at. So once I hit that 768, it flips over to a tablet view and remains the same for a phone, but it scales down a little bit. So I think that looks pretty good. Once we get to a main desktop view, the only thing maybe at this point would maybe give a little bit of space in between these two, the logo and the text. So what we'll want to do is say, let's give this nav item a margin on the left. So let's come into our nav, and let's go ahead and say, let's give it a margin left, and let's do a percentage so it changes based on screen size. And let's give it something small like 5%, and hit save and see what we've done. Okay, that bumped it over enough just to give it a little clarity. And we're starting to get there. So I think once we have the inline block and the logo is looking the same and the page scrolls, we're pretty much done with the follow along assignment. So what we've done today is we've taken some basic assets, a logo and two images, and we've said based upon your screen size, be that mobile, tablet, or desktop, and respond accordingly based on those and scale and size them. So once you guys are done with this, go ahead and click save, go back to brackets and save here and save here, and then go ahead and come into your My Documents Windows or desktop or wherever you have your folder, Finder on Mac, and take this folder and go ahead and compress it. And go ahead and take that zipped up folder with your last name in it and go ahead and submit that on Blackboard by uploading it through the follow along assignment. If you have any questions, feel free to email me, but try to be specific with what questions you have. Many times I get emails, my A tag isn't working. That's great, my A tag isn't working either. Which A tag, what page is it on, what section is it? If you want to attach your files to the email, that will help as well. Or if you want to set up a time to Google Hangout, things like that. Feel free to hit pause here, go get something to drink, hit rewind, and watch it through again if something isn't working on your page before you get it the first time. Before you track down, sometimes maybe starting over will help. And if not, we can do a Google Hangout and I can walk you through some things. But other than that, hope you guys had a good time with your HTML and CSS last 2 weeks. And right now we're going to be moving into WordPress. So while these sections have been teaching you the fundamentals and how to write the language, WordPress will create most of these things out of the box in PHP. You will be changing CSS, but not so much HTML. But then you'll also be aligning images, uploading files, things like that as you create your pages and your final capstone project for this class. So see you guys next week, and hope you